The night was quiet over the city. The streets were almost empty, except for a few late workers heading home and young people laughing outside small cafes. Streetlights glowed softly, and the sound of traffic was fading as midnight approached. For most people, it was just another peaceful night, but high above, far beyond the clouds, something had begun to change. At first, it was nothing more than a faint shimmer in the stars, so faint that most people didn't even notice. A single speck of light moved slightly, then stopped. It could have been a satellite or maybe an airplane catching the moonlight. But then another light appeared next to it, and another, and another. Within minutes, dozens of strange lights were moving in the night sky. On the ground, a man named Daniel stood outside his small apartment, smoking quietly. He had lived in the city his whole life and loved watching the stars. But tonight, something about them felt wrong. "Those aren't planes," he muttered to himself, squinting. The lights were too high, too far, and moving too perfectly in formation. Far away, on the other side of the world, in a small village in South America, a young girl named Alma was lying on the grass, looking up. She saw the same lights. They moved slowly at first, then began shifting in strange geometric shapes: circles, triangles, spirals. No airplane or drone could move like that. It wasn't long before social media began to explode with videos. Phones pointed at the sky, shaky voices whispering in fear. "What is that? Is it some kind of military thing? No, it's too big." In less than half an hour, the whole world was watching. The lights began to grow brighter, like glowing pearls scattered across the heavens. They pulsed gently, as if breathing. And then, something even stranger happened. The stars behind them began to disappear. It was not the lights themselves that made the stars vanish. It was what stood between them and the earth, a shape, a shadow, something enormous. Astronomers were the first to realize what they were looking at. They called their colleagues in hushed voices, their hands shaking. Telescopes focused on the strange formations, and one by one, the scientists came to the same terrifying conclusion. This was no natural phenomenon. It was a fleet, not a handful of ships, not dozens, hundreds, and they were not from Earth. In a control room deep under the mountains of Colorado, the United Earth Defense Network was already on high alert. Generals and scientists stood over giant holographic maps, tracking the incoming objects. "They came out of nowhere," one officer said, his voice trembling. "No warning, no detection until they were already in the outer atmosphere." "That's impossible," another argued. "No one can just appear here without being seen coming from deep space." But the answer was simple, and it was the one no one wanted to say out loud. "They're not human," a voice finally said. The room went silent. The commander, a tall woman with steel-gray hair, stepped forward. She stared at the hologram, her eyes narrowing. She had seen something like this before, not in her lifetime, but in the records, in the whispers of history that most people dismissed as myth. "They're back," she said quietly. "After 500,000 years. 500,000 years ago, before the first great cities of humankind, before the first written words, the skies had been filled with fire. The invaders came from the stars, looking for resources, for conquest. Humanity was small then, scattered tribes, stone tools, simple huts. Against the alien war machines, they had no chance. But for reasons no one understood, the aliens had left before finishing their work. Some thought it was mercy. Others believed they had been called away to fight a bigger war. Whatever the reason, they had vanished, leaving only ruins, strange artifacts, and a warning carved into the oldest stones. One day, they will return. Now, that day had come. The alien fleet moved slowly but with purpose. Their formation was tight, their patterns perfect, like a predator stalking its prey. From Earth's surface, the lights were hypnotic. People gathered on rooftops and in open fields, staring upward. Some prayed, some wept, others stood frozen, unable to look away. In the Pacific Ocean, the crew of a cargo ship stopped their work to watch the strange glow above the clouds. The captain, a weathered man who had spent 40 years at sea, crossed himself. This is not a storm," he whispered. In a small African desert outpost, soldiers stood at the edge of the dunes, their weapons useless against what they saw. In space, on the International Space Station, the astronauts floated in silence, their cameras recording every detail. The commander of the ISS shook his head slowly. "They're massive, bigger than anything we've ever built, and they're not slowing down." On the alien flagship, a creature unlike anything on Earth stood before a massive viewing screen. Its skin was dark and scaled, its eyes sharp and reflective like glass. Around it, other members of its kind moved with military precision. They had returned to finish what their ancestors had started. 500,000 years ago, Earth had been nothing but a young, unimportant world. Its people had been primitive, fragile, easy to conquer. But now, the planet below was glowing with cities, energy grids, and strange electromagnetic fields. The alien leader tilted its head. "They have advanced," it hissed, "but they are still human. They will fall." Another alien officer shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, our sensors are having difficulty mapping certain regions of the surface. Some areas appear empty. Others are hidden." "Hidden?" the commander repeated. "No world hides from us." But even as it said the words, something in its instincts stirred, something ancient, a warning passed down from long ago. Back on Earth, the world's governments scrambled to respond. Fighter jets were scrambled. Naval fleets moved into position. Satellites turned their sensors toward the alien armada. But something strange was happening. The alien ships were not firing. They were not broadcasting any signals. They were simply watching. For hours, they stayed in the upper atmosphere, their massive shadows drifting slowly over continents and oceans. The people below lived in a state of frozen fear. Schools closed, streets emptied. In the great cities, skyscrapers stood like silent sentinels, their lights glowing in the strange half-darkness created by the alien presence above. In the middle of Times Square, a single massive screen displayed the words, "Stay calm, shelter in place." But calm was impossible. In a small apartment in Tokyo, a grandmother told her grandchildren an old story her own grandmother had told her about the first time the sky had changed, in the age before memory. In the deserts of Australia, Aboriginal, elders painted strange shapes on the ground, shapes that had been passed down for thousands of years. In the mountains of South America, archaeologists stared at ancient carvings that seemed to depict the same ships now floating above their heads. The truth was sinking in. Humanity had known this was coming. The signs had always been there. Then, without warning, one of the alien ships moved. It descended slowly, breaking through the clouds with terrifying grace. Its surface was black as space, covered in glowing blue lines that pulsed like veins. It made no sound, but the air around it seemed to vibrate. It stopped over the Atlantic Ocean, hovering as if considering its next move. Cameras everywhere zoomed in. Millions watched live on their screens. The alien ship began to emit a low hum, like the sound of distant thunder. The water beneath it rippled violently. In the control room under the Colorado mountains, alarms blared. "They're scanning us," an officer said. "No," the commander replied coldly. "They're judging us." On the alien flagship, the leader stared at Earth's surface. "They have grown, but growth does not mean strength." The leader turned to its crew. "Send the message." A moment later, across every television, every radio, every phone, a voice unlike anything human filled the air. "We have returned. You will surrender." And just like that, the sky had changed forever. The alien voice echoed across the world, deep and cold, as if it came from the bones of the earth itself. "We have returned. You will surrender." For a moment, there was only silence. No birds, no traffic. Even the wind seemed to pause. In homes, offices, and shelters, people stared at their screens, not fully understanding what they had just heard. It was not a request. It was a demand, one spoken with the certainty of a predator that has already won. In the underground command center beneath Colorado, the air was tense. Generals exchanged quick glances. They all knew what history said about the last time such a voice had been heard. 500,000 years ago, before the first cities and before the first writing, the sky had burned with fire. The ancient invaders came in ships far beyond the imagination of the early humans. They swept across oceans and deserts, crushing tribes and scattering survivors into the wild. The weapons they carried could level mountains. Back then, humanity had nothing but stone spears and fire. They could not fight back. They could only run, hide, and hope. Yet just when it seemed all was lost, the invaders had suddenly left. No, one knew why. In a small research lab in Cairo, archaeologist Dr. Layla Hassan stared at a fragment of ancient stone, a piece she had studied for years. The carvings showed long, narrow ships in the sky, striking beams of light down on villages. She had once thought it was only a myth carved into rock. But now it was proof. Her mind raced. She remembered the markings on the stone, a warning written in a language older than history itself. The sky will open again. The hunters will return. Be ready. In the alien flagship, Commander Scar stood before a great viewing window, its scaled hands clasped behind its back. The humans below looked different from the ones in their records. The planet glowed with cities, roads, and machines. "They have advanced," one officer said. "They are still prey," Scar replied. But deep in the commander's mind, a faint memory stirred, a memory passed down from its ancestors. Long ago, in the final days of their first invasion, there had been something strange. The primitive humans, though weak, had been fearless in ways that made no sense. They fought to the last breath, refusing to kneel even when faced with weapons that could tear apart the sky. There had been an old saying among the alien warriors, "A human cornered is more dangerous than a beast." On Earth, the governments of the world struggled to decide what to do. Some leaders wanted to talk, some wanted to fight, some wanted to surrender before it was too late. In a bunker deep under London, Prime Minister Evelyn Graves spoke with the President of the United Earth Council. "They didn't come here for peace," she said. "They came to finish what they started." The president's voice was grim. "And they think we're still the same as we were 500,000 years ago." In the quiet of a remote mountain valley in Tibet, an old monk lit incense and bowed before a stone tablet carved into the cliff. It showed figures from the stars kneeling before a single human figure holding a spear of light. No one alive knew who had carved it, or when. But the old monk whispered, as if speaking to the sky itself, "They will see what we have become." In space, the alien fleet moved closer. Their shadows fell over the oceans and continents. They believed they understood the enemy below. Small, emotional, easy to control. But they had no idea that humanity had changed in ways they could not imagine. The memories of the first invasion had never truly died. They had been passed down in stories, in carvings, in songs. And somewhere, deep within Earth's hidden defenses, a quiet command was already being prepared. No one spoke it aloud. No one announced it to the world. It was a single order, sent only to those who needed to know. Do not attack, yet. The alien fleet drifted in high orbit, a wall of dark shapes blocking the stars. From the ground, their glowing blue lines looked like slow-moving constellations, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Commander Scar waited for a reply to the demand they had sent. "We have returned. You will surrender." But no answer came. In the alien control chamber, officers exchanged uncertain glances. "Perhaps they did not hear us," one suggested. "They heard," Scar replied. "They are afraid. They will speak soon." On Earth, the silence was not from fear. It was planned. In the deep command bunker under Colorado, the commander of the United Earth Defense sat at a large circular table surrounded by screens showing every corner of the planet. The alien fleet was in position. They had the high ground. They expected panic, chaos, begging, but the humans gave them nothing. "No public broadcasts," the commander ordered. "No military threats. No warning shots." Around the room, officers nodded. In the past, humans had fought back instantly against invaders, but this time, they would wait. The strange quiet began to unsettle people across the world. On city streets, crowds gathered to watch the sky, expecting to hear the government speak. But there was only the wind and the low hum of the alien ships above. In a small fishing village in Norway, an old man stared at the glowing lights over the sea. "They are waiting for us to speak first," he told his grandson. "But why don't we?" the boy asked. The old man smiled faintly. "Because the first one to speak always shows their weakness." Inside the alien flagship, the tension grew. Scar ordered more scans of the planet. But something strange kept happening. Their deep-range sensors were returning incomplete data. Entire cities vanished from the readings as if they didn't exist. Regions of the oceans appeared as empty black voids, hiding whatever was beneath. "The waves." "This is impossible," the alien science officer said, his voice uneasy. Scar's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "We can see them with our eyes," the officer said, "but the machines, they cannot." Still, the humans said nothing. From their hidden stations in space, cloaked satellites recorded every alien movement. From deep ocean bases, stealth submarines stayed silent, drifting beneath the waves. From high in the mountains, massive ground. Weapons waited under camouflage, powered but unseen. It was as if the whole planet had gone still, holding its breath. Hours passed. The aliens had expected an easy start to their invasion, a quick show of power, followed by Earth's surrender, but the silence felt wrong. In the Alien War Council, one officer finally spoke what the others were thinking. "They are not behaving like prey." Far below, in a quiet operations room somewhere in Antarctica, a single encrypted message was sent out to the highest-ranking human defense leaders across the globe. It contained only 4 words. "Let them come closer." The alien flagship broke formation and began to descend. Its black surface shimmered with streams of blue light, moving like rivers under glass. The ship was vast, so large it could cast a shadow over an entire city. Below, on Earth, millions watched through windows from rooftops or on their screens as the massive shape pushed through the upper clouds. The flagship slowed over the Atlantic Ocean, hovering in place. From its lower hull, a bright sphere of energy began to form. It pulsed with a deep hum that made the air vibrate across entire coastlines. In the alien control chamber, Commander Scar turned to his officers. "They will answer now," he said confidently. "Prepare the translation system. Broadcast again." A deep, echoing voice filled the skies, heard in every language, in every home, through every device. This is your only warning. You will surrender, or we will burn your skies. Still, Earth gave no reply. Inside the United Earth Defense Command Center, the commander watched the broadcast on a large screen. Her face was calm. "Maintain silence," she ordered. An officer hesitated. "Ma'am, the people will want a response." "They'll get one," she said softly. "But not yet." Scar narrowed his eyes. This was not the reaction he expected. He signaled to his crew. "Send scouts. I want their cities mapped. I want to know every place they hide." From the flagship's lower bays, small, sleek ships shot out in groups, moving toward Earth's major population centers. They scanned skyscrapers, streets, rivers, but their readings were incomplete. Entire neighborhoods were invisible to their sensors, hidden behind some kind of distortion. One scout ship flew low over the coast of South America. Through the clouds, its crew spotted something strange. A massive shape moving under the water. It was not a whale, not a submarine. It was larger than any human ship in recorded history. Before they could scan it, the object vanished into the dark depths. The alien pilot sent the data back to the flagship. Scar stared at the readings. "Is this a weapon?" The science officer shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but it was watching us." In the Pacific, another scout moved toward what should have been an empty patch of ocean. But suddenly, in a burst of blinding light, a massive human ship appeared out of nowhere, an impossible sharp-edged design that seemed to bend the air around it. It floated silently, its dark surface absorbing all radar. Before the alien scout could react, the human vessel vanished again, leaving only ripples on the water. Back on the flagship, confusion spread through the alien crew. "They are hiding. Ships from us," one officer said. Scar's voice was sharp. "Impossible! No one hides from our scanners." But deep in his mind, the unease grew. Finally, the alien flagship's attention turned to Earth's upper orbit, where their sensors had just detected something moving. It was small, sleek, and clearly artificial. A human ship. The aliens locked onto it, preparing to fire. But before their weapon could charge, the human ship blinked and disappeared. It reappeared seconds later behind the alien escort ship that had targeted it. One bright flash, and the alien vessel exploded in silence, torn apart in a single hit. In the alien control chamber, officers shouted in disbelief. Scar gripped the railing, his voice low. "They are not the same as before." The alien fleet spread its scouts across the planet, determined to uncover the truth. Small, fast ships flew over continents and oceans, their scanners sweeping the surface in thin beams of blue light. At first, they detected the usual signs of life: cities, roads, ships, aircraft. But then, things began to change. Over the frozen lands of Siberia, one alien scout's sensors suddenly went black. No signal, no readings. The pilot looked out through the viewing window and saw nothing. Where there should have been a vast military installation, there was only empty snow. And yet, just for a second, the snow rippled, as if something enormous had shifted beneath it. In the skies above Africa, another scout ship tracked heat signatures from a desert convoy. Dozens of human vehicles moved in a perfect line toward what looked like open sand. But the moment the alien pilot blinked, the entire convoy was gone. Not destroyed, not hidden behind rocks. Gone, as if they had stepped out of reality itself. Over. The Pacific Ocean. Alien sensors detected movement below the waves. The readings showed several massive shapes moving together, too large to be submarines. As the scout descended for a closer look, the water itself seemed to darken, swallowing the shapes whole. The pilot tried to follow, but his ship's systems began to fail one by one. Lights flickered, Controls froze. Then, without warning, his ship was back in normal flight, miles away from where it had been. The strange shapes were gone. Back on the alien flagship, Commander Scar reviewed the scout reports. "They are hiding something," the science officer said. "Not something," Scar corrected. "Many things." The report spoke of invisible cities, shifting landscapes, and giant vessels moving unseen under the oceans. It made no sense. Human technology had advanced, yes, but this level of stealth was beyond anything the aliens had expected. In low orbit, another scout reported movement inside Earth's atmosphere. Something was flying there. But it wasn't an aircraft. It was too large, its outline blurred like a shadow in the sky. It didn't match any known design. When the scout ship tried to approach, the shadow simply vanished. Far below, in a human control center hidden beneath the Andes Mountains, operators watched alien movements on glowing screens. One of them smiled faintly. "They're looking," she said. The man beside her nodded. "Let them look. The more they search, the more they'll fear." By the time the scouts returned to the flagship, a sense of unease had spread through the alien fleet. They had come expecting to see weakness. Instead, they had found a world that refused to be mapped, and shadows that moved where no shadows should be. In the early hours of the morning, one alien scout ship flew low over the North American plains. The pilot's orders were simple: map every settlement, record every defensive structure. At first, the mission was easy. The scanners showed small towns, roads, and fields. But then the pilot came upon a large patch of land that appeared completely empty. It was strange. By all logic, there should have been a city here. Roads from every direction led toward this spot, and then stopped. Nothing but grassland stretched out below. The pilot decided to drop lower for a better view. As the ship descended, the air shimmered, and suddenly, an entire city appeared beneath him. It was massive, shining with towers of glass and steel. Roads were busy with cars. Lights glowed in the windows. It looked alive, full of human activity, and yet the scanners still read nothing. To the alien ship's instruments, the land was still empty. The pilot circled, confused. He could see the city with his own eyes, but his systems said it wasn't there. He activated a deep scan, but before the reading could finish, the city began to fade. One by one, the buildings turned transparent, the lights dimmed, and the streets vanished into mist. Within seconds, the grassland was back, untouched. On the flagship, the pilot's report caused chaos. Scar listened as his officer explained, "It wasn't camouflage, it wasn't cloaking, it was something else. The city existed and didn't exist at the same time." The science officer frowned. "That's not possible. A city that can disappear like that would require technology far beyond their level." Scar's eyes narrowed. "Or," he said, "it's not their technology at all." Far below, in a hidden control room inside the very city that had vanished, a human operator smiled as the alien scout flew away. "Works every time," she said. Her colleague glanced at the monitors. "How long until they figure it out?" She shook her head. "They won't. Not unless we want them to." By the end of the day, rumors had begun to spread through the alien fleet. Stories of ghost cities, invisible armies, and strange shapes under the oceans. None of it matched the primitive enemy their ancestors had once faced. For the first time since arriving, Commander Scar felt something he had not felt in centuries' doubt. For 2 full days, the alien fleet circled Earth like vultures over a silent prey. They had sent messages, scanned the planet, and even sent scouts into its skies and oceans. But they still had no clear picture of what they were dealing with. The humans had not fired a shot. They had not spoken a single word. Commander Scar stood in the flagship's command chamber, staring at the rotating image of Earth on the main display. "This silence is a trap," he muttered. The science officer said nothing. Even he was beginning to feel it. The tension, the wrongness. Then, without warning, something appeared in the sky. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a weapon. It was a single bright line of light stretching across the blackness of space. A message written in the stars themselves. Every ship in the alien fleet detected it at the same moment. The symbols were not alien. They were human. The message was short. Only 3 words. "We remember you." On the flagship, the crew froze. The words were simple, but their meaning was sharp as a blade. Scar turned to his officers. "Impossible. They cannot know us." "They do," the science officer said quietly. "The data matches. They know exactly who we are." Deep beneath the Earth's surface, in a sealed operations room, a group of human leaders watched the alien fleet's reaction on large monitors. One of them, an older man with a hard gaze, leaned forward. "They got the message?" he asked. "Yes, sir," replied the communications officer. "Good," the man said. "Let them think about it." Across the alien fleet, whispers began to spread between crews. How could humans know of events that had happened 500,000 years ago? Even the alien archives from that time were incomplete, and yet these humans had remembered. That night, from the perspective of the people on Earth, the alien fleet looked still and unmoving. But inside the War Council aboard the flagship, a storm was brewing. The hunters had come expecting prey. Now, they were starting to wonder if they had just stepped into the territory of another predator. The alien fleet had waited long enough. For days, the humans had been silent, watching, hiding, refusing to answer. Commander Scar decided it was time to provoke them. "Choose a target," he ordered. An officer pointed to a human satellite in high orbit. "This will get their attention without damaging their cities." Scar nodded. "Fire!" A beam of bright white energy shot from the alien ship. It sliced through space with terrifying speed, aimed directly at the satellite, but before it could hit, the target vanished. The satellite had simply disappeared, as if the beam had been aimed at empty space. Seconds later, the same satellite reappeared, but not where it had been. It now hovered directly above the alien warship that had fired the shot. And then, without warning, the satellite released a single pulse of light. The alien warship's systems went dark instantly. No explosions, no debris. The massive ship simply shut down, powerless, drifting like a dead whale in the ocean of space. On the flagship, chaos erupted. "How is this possible?" shouted one officer. "They moved it," the science officer said, eyes wide. "The humans moved the satellite in less than a second. We didn't even detect the method." Scar clenched his jaw. That was a warning. They could have destroyed us. But curiosity gnawed at him. "Send a strike force," he ordered. "I want to see what they do when we attack directly." 6 alien attack ships broke formation, diving toward a coastal military base in Asia. They approached fast, shields raised, weapons hot. From above, it looked like nothing could stop them. But the moment they entered the atmosphere, the air around them seemed to twist. The sky shimmered, and human ships appeared, huge and sleek, their black hulls bending light itself. Before the aliens could react, the human ships vanished from view, only to reappear behind the alien strike force. What happened next was over in less than 3 seconds. 6 bright flashes, 6 alien ships gone, no wreckage, no sound, just empty sky. On the flagship, every officer stared at the battle reports in silence. The data was clear. Human ships had moved faster than their sensors could track. Weapons unknown, tactics unpredictable. For the first time since arriving, Commander Scar felt a cold, unfamiliar feeling crawl through him. Fear. Commander Scar sat alone in his quarters, the battle report still glowing on his desk. The silence in the room felt heavy. He kept replaying the images. Human ships appearing out of nowhere, alien vessels gone without a trace. It didn't make sense. No species should be able to move like that. But somewhere in the back of his mind, the answer was already there. He had read it once, long ago, buried in the oldest files of his people's history. He accessed the restricted archives. The screen flickered, showing a document dated 500,000 years ago. The writing was old, the symbols rough, but the meaning was clear. It was a field report from the first alien war against Earth. Back then, humans had been primitive: spears, fire, small settlements. And yet, the report spoke of anomalies. Villages that vanished overnight, hunters who struck and disappeared without a trace, and a warning from the commander of that first invasion: do not return. This world hides its true face. Scar leaned back, his claws tapping against the table. His ancestors had ignored the strange events back then, believing humans were too weak to matter. But what if the humans had already been something else? Something far older? He read on. The final entry chilled him. If they survive long enough, they will surpass us. And when they do, the stars will shake. In the War Council, Scar tried to keep his voice steady. Our ancestors may have known more than they admitted, he said to his officers. They didn't fear human weapons. They feared human patience. The science officer frowned. Patience? Yes, Scar said, looking out the viewport toward the glowing blue planet below. They waited for 500,000 years for us to come back. Far below, deep in a hidden control facility, the human leader who had sent the first message stood watching the alien fleet on a massive screen. They'll find the old warning soon, said one of his aides. That's the idea, the leader replied. It's time they remember why they left. The alien fleet's war council was tense. Commander Scar had not given the order to retreat, but his officers could see the thought in his eyes. The humans were too fast, too unpredictable. And if the old warnings were true, every minute they stayed here was a risk. Finally, Scar made the decision. Prepare the fleet for withdrawal, he said. We'll leave the system, regroup, and return with a stronger force. The officers obeyed without argument. Within the hour, the alien ships began moving toward the outer edge of the solar system. At first, everything seemed normal. Stars drifted past, the blackness of space stretching endlessly ahead. Then the navigation officer's voice broke the silence. Commander, we have a problem. What problem? Scar demanded. The star field is wrong. Scar looked at the display. It took him only seconds to see it. The stars ahead weren't shifting the way they should. It was as if space itself had stopped. Another officer checked the sensors. Commander, we're not moving. Scar's claws tightened on the command chair. Impossible. We're at full speed. No, the science officer said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. They've closed the exits. All across the alien fleet, reports came in. Every ship that tried to leave found itself caught in the same strange distortion. It wasn't a physical barrier. It wasn't gravity. It was something else. One officer said it aloud. They've locked the system. On Earth, the human leader watched a 3D hologram of the solar system. Around the outer edge, faint rings of energy pulsed like ripples on water. Invisible to the naked eye, but impossible to cross. They'll realize soon, an aide said. The leader nodded. By then, it won't matter. They're already inside the cage. Back in the flagship, Scar's second-in-command turned to him. What do we do now? Scar didn't answer right away. He just stared at the blue planet. In the distance, the same feeling from before growing stronger in his chest. "We came as hunters," he finally said. "Now, we're the prey." For hours, the alien fleet hung in silent frustration. They had tried every maneuver, every jump drive sequence, every trick known to their kind. But the invisible cage around the solar system held firm. No ship could pass through it. It was as if the humans had taken control of space itself. Commander Scar stood on the bridge, watching the quiet planet on the main screen. "They know we can't leave," he said. "They're forcing us to wait." The waiting ended without warning. A bright pulse of light exploded in front of every alien ship at the same instant, a perfectly timed flash that carried no heat, no damage, but filled every display with static. When the static cleared, a human face appeared. It was an older man, his eyes cold and steady. He spoke in perfect alien language, his voice calm and measured. "You have returned to the world you once hunted. We have not forgotten. You will not leave without our permission." On the alien flagship, the bridge fell silent. The humans had spoken at last. Scar stepped forward, speaking directly to the image. "This is a misunderstanding. We came to—" The man on the screen cut him off. "Do not lie to us. We know why you came. We have seen the patterns of your fleet. We know your weapons. And we know your history." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to something colder. "500,000 years ago you were warned. You did not listen. Now you will." See the cost. The transmission ended. No threats, no demands. Just silence. And the knowledge that the humans were no longer hiding. In the human control facility deep underground, the same man turned to his officers. "They'll be afraid now," one of them said. "They should be," the leader replied. "But fear is not enough. We need them to make a mistake." On the alien flagship, Scar's second-in-command shifted uneasily. "They're toying with us." "Yes," Scar admitted, his eyes never leaving the blue planet on the screen. "And I don't think they've shown us even a fraction of what they can do." The alien fleet waited, engines running, weapons charged, scanning every inch of space around them. But nothing moved. No human ships appeared. It was as if the message they had received had been the end of it. Commander Scar knew better. "This is the calm before the attack," he muttered. "They're not rushing. They're choosing where to hit us first." He didn't have to wait long to find out. Without warning, the alien destroyer Vraktor vanished from the tactical display. No explosion, no debris, just gone, as if it had never existed. "Find it," Scar barked. The sensor officer's voice shook. "Commander, it's not anywhere. It's as if the ship was erased from reality." Moments later, another ship disappeared. Then another. Each time there was no sound, no light, no trace. Entire warships, with hundreds of crew members, gone in less than a second. Across the fleet, panic spread like fire. No one knew where the attack was coming from. There was nothing to lock weapons onto, nothing to fight. On Earth, in a hidden operations chamber, the human leader watched small red dots vanish from the holographic map of the solar system. "They're testing the edges of the net," an officer said. "No," the leader replied. "We're showing them the edge of the abyss." Back on the flagship, Scar gripped the armrest of his chair. "This is not war," he growled. "This is extermination." The science officer turned toward him, his eyes wide. "Commander, what if we were wrong about them? What if they were never prey at all?" Commander Scar could feel the fear crawling through his fleet. In just 1 hour, they had lost 6 warships without a single shot fired in return. There were no explosions, no damage reports, only empty silence where ships had once been. "We can't just sit here," his second-in-command said. "If we strike first, we might break their hold." Scar hesitated, then gave the order. All ships, form attack formation. Target Earth. The alien fleet moved as one, weapons charging, preparing to unleash the full power of their arsenal. But the moment they crossed the halfway point toward the planet, every display on every ship went black. Engines shut down, weapons powered off. It was as if the entire fleet had been turned into lifeless metal statues drifting in space. Restart. "Systems!" Scar roared. The engineering teams worked frantically, but nothing responded. The ships weren't damaged. They had simply stopped obeying. Then a new signal appeared on every screen. Not words, not images. Just a slow, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat. It echoed through every deck, every corridor, every mind. "They're inside our systems," the science officer whispered. "No," Scar said, his voice low. "They're inside us." Far below, in the human command center, the leader watched the alien ships drift helplessly. "They thought they could threaten us with numbers," he said. "Now they understand, numbers mean nothing." Out in space, the alien fleet began to move again, but not by their own control. One by one, the ships turned away from Earth and started drifting toward a single point far beyond the planet. The humans were hurting them. Scar felt the trap closing in, and for the first time, he wondered if any of his people would live to tell what happened here. The alien fleet drifted toward a dark, empty point in space, unable to change course. Every attempt to break free failed. Their weapons were dead, their engines useless, their communications jammed. On the flagship, Commander Scar watched helplessly as the stars shifted around them. The point they were approaching was not empty. A massive structure began to emerge. From the darkness, black as the void, its edges glowing faintly like molten metal. It was larger than any alien station ever built, and it radiated a quiet, terrifying power. Then the human voice returned, deep and calm, echoing through every ship. "500,000 years ago, you came here as conquerors. You slaughtered without mercy. You believed we would never rise again." The structure's glowing lines pulsed in rhythm with the voice. "We survived. We rebuilt. And we remembered. We turned your own technology against you. Now we give you a choice." Scar's jaw tightened. He did not like the word choice. The humans had made it clear they were in complete control. The voice continued. "Choice 1. Surrender your ships, your weapons, and your history. Leave this place in exile, never to return." A pause. "Choice 2. Refuse, and we erase your entire fleet from existence." Silence filled the alien bridges. Every crew member knew the threat was real. They had seen ships vanish into nothing. No one knew where they went. No one dared to ask. On the flagship, Scar's second-in-command turned to him. "What do we do?" Scar's eyes narrowed. "They think they have already won," he said. "But maybe they don't know everything we still have." He looked at the massive black structure ahead and felt a surge of defiance. "Prepare for my answer," he ordered. Commander Scar stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring at the massive human structure looming ahead. Every crew member waited silently, knowing this moment could be the end. The human's voice came again, calm and cold. "The choice is yours. Surrender or be erased." Scar clenched his claws. He had been a conqueror all his life, leading fleets to victory. Now, for the first time, he faced an enemy he could not simply overpower. He lifted a claw and spoke into the main comm. "We will not surrender." Silence fell across the human network for a heartbeat. Then the fleet around them shuddered violently. Suddenly, all the alien ships activated their weapons, firing in a desperate, chaotic barrage toward the human structure, but every shot froze in midair. Energy weapons fizzled, missiles vanished before launch, shields flickered and failed. Humans had already anticipated everything. From the structure, a wave of light pulsed outward. It wrapped around the alien fleet like invisible chains, guiding every ship into the center of the abyss. Engines roared uselessly, weapons fired pointlessly, panic erupted aboard every vessel. Scar watched as the fleet he had commanded for centuries was trapped, helpless, at the mercy of humans. And yet, in that moment, he also saw it. The humans were not cruel. They offered survival, if only he would submit. After a long pause, Scar's voice came again, lower now, filled with both pride and fear. "We surrender!" Immediately, the human structure pulsed one last time, releasing the alien fleet. From its invisible grip, ships floated free, battered but intact. The human's voice echoed one final time. "Remember this, we do not conquer, we endure, and we remember." Scar stared at Earth below, glowing peacefully against the black void. 500,000 years of history, destruction, and pride had led to this moment. He knew one truth. Humanity was unlike any other species in the galaxy, and the galaxy itself had just been reminded that the hunters had become the hunted, and that some prey were never meant to be tamed. The sky over Earth returned to calm, the alien fleet slowly retreating, forever changed. Humanity had not only survived, it had sent a message across the stars. They were patient, they were powerful, and they would never be underestimated again.